generally speaking, stratifying your data in Excel can be a bit difficult. However, we're going to show two techniques that should make it easy for you to stratify your data. The first technique utilizes a if statement, and the if statement can get a little hard to read and understand. However, what's essentially happening here is that the amount field is viewed first looking at the largest amount, the $1,000 in this case, and if so, it's over 1,000. If not, then it goes to the next one and says, is it over $100? And then if not, etc. And we've just come up with 3 strata to keep it very simple, and you want to start from the highest to the lowest and go to the matching item. So let's take a look at this technique in Excel. So taking a look at this formula, we have the equal if formula going to B2, which is the amount field, and then taking a look, is it over 1,000, etc., etc. And you're going to want to copy that program verbatim, and I would suggest not going more than 5 strata. There is a point where memory starts to take hold, so I would say that don't go more than 5. I've used 3 in this case just to keep it relatively simple, yet you might want to go to more. So now that I've built that stratification, what we can then do is go over to the Stratify pivot. And in this pivot, we've already included the strata field within the row label area. And we also have up top the years and months, so that we've actually stratified in this case by that level. And in the below, we then have the various sum fields of the count during that time. So let me just kind of go to the Stratify chart. And in this Stratify chart, you can start to see levels of activity or certain months where in certain pockets of areas there is a very large trend upward or downward for that month in comparison to other months. So heading back to the Stratify pivot table, again in this case we've really just selected that field. In this pivot, we're going to get rid of, I'm going to keep the years field because I find that interesting, and I'm just going to take away the kind of the months field in that case. We grouped on that field on months, and here we now have it by year. So let's take a look now at this dynamic chart. And really, again, what's fantastic about pivot tables is the ability to go back and forth between the Stratify and Stratify chart, in this case the pivot table and the chart, and be able to see the wide variations. Now, I didn't realize that in 2010 that it had so much activity in relation to 11 and 9. I mean, when I looked at it monthly, it was sort of hard to see that. But now that I'm looking at it by year, it's very apparent across the board. So now that we understand how to use the Stratify in our pivot table, we're going to go back into our payables data, and I've added a new column using a VLOOKUP function, and that VLOOKUP is taking a look at this table over here. And what I do is I set up 2, and actually first off I need to note that Charlie Walker at Top Cats provided this idea, and I do thank him for this because it was a much better way of doing your stratifications, and it does allow you a lot more limit. I mean, you could go a lot more in strata than the 5 or so that you'll want to put into this if statement. So it's a much better way of doing it. It's just a little bit tricky, so you need to watch out. What you want to do is set your first value as the lowest possible value in your data file, and call that 0 and under, because essentially what the system is going to do is take a look at that limit and go anything above that limit until it hits the next number, and then it's going to look at that. So again, I've kept everything in the 0 and under and the minus 5,000. Don't know if I really need the 0 and under here, but I put it in there for safety's sake. And then I put a penny onwards, and then anything over a penny it's going to consider up to it hits $100, and then it's going to do the same to 1,000, 2,000 and 5,000. Now I know that I don't have anything over $5,000 in my data file, but if I did, everything would fall into this category here, 5,000 and over, because it would look at that lower limit and then kind of work upwards from there, and that's the last one, so there's nothing else to do. This is a way better way to do it. Let's take a look at the VLOOKUP function. This is kind of my table that I'm using, and I'm going to click on the Insert Function button so that I can take a look at the data. So the lookup value is B2, which is this amount field here. That field does not have the actual dollar signs around it, and that is where we use the table array. Now, the reason we're putting dollar signs around it is to fix that value. And what you can do is enter the dollar signs yourself, or what you can do is select F4. So let me just highlight this. So imagine I've just highlighted that Q through R11. I can hit my F4 button, and it will automatically bring in that information, and then I can close that. Now I want to carry over whenever there's a kind of a match in column Q. I want to write what is in column 2, which is R in this case, so you put column 2. Now the strangeness, or the thing that I normally don't do with VLOOKUP, is use the true statement. Now the true statement will actually look more for a close approximate match as opposed to a perfect match. A false would be a perfect match, and that's really good when you're doing matches on, say, vendor number between files. You want a perfect match. But with true, you can actually get more of a close match, and that's how it's doing this stratification using the VLOOKUP. Again, much better way of doing it, a lot easier to set up, and then edit. Click OK, and I can now, again, I copied this formula down in this sample data set that you'll be able to download as well. And after copying it down, I can go back over to my Stratify chart. Now, in the Stratify pivot, I notice that I have a strata and a strata VLOOKUP. I'm going to click on strata VLOOKUP and deselect the strata just to kind of get back. And it gives me a little more flavor, I guess, of what's happening, in the data itself. And we're able to kind of see more so than we were able to see with just the 3 categories. If we didn't need to drill down on, say, some of the larger items, I just see this, large year and value. Of course, you can double click on that, and that will bring up that column. Notice everything here is over $5,000, and I'm looking in column B in this case, and everything is over the 5,000 mark.